We're on Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Aleph, and also just as a reminder, Daf tomorrow is the same time, 8:45, because of the stat holiday. Lo yar below nashim el shmona esrei. A king may not have more than 18 wives, and that's what the Torah means when it says he may not have too many wives. Rabbi Yehuda Omer marba hulo uvilvad shelo yehu mesirosas libo. Rabbi Yehuda says, I disagree with that. I hold that a king can have as many wives, even more than 18, as he wants, as long as they don't turn his heart astray. Just have to be patient. It's a lot of ground today. Rabbi Shimon Omer, afilu echas umesira es libo, hareza lo yisa'ena. Im kain lamanemar lo yarba lo nashim, da afilu ka'avigoyel. So Rabbi Shimon says, in defense of the Tanakama, who says that it's capped at 18, he says, no. Even if there's only one wife who turns his heart astray, that's one wife too many. So then why does the Torah say, lo yar below nashim? He may not have too many wives, if even one wife is too many. Da'afilu ka'avigail. It's to tell you that even if he has wives that are as righteous as David's wife Avigail, who is like held up high as the symbol of righteousness, he may not have more than 18. In other words, the basic machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon is there an absolute cap regardless of the righteousness of the women or not? The Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon says yes, there's an absolute cap. And Rabbi Yehuda says no, there's no absolute cap. It all depends upon the logic of the pasuk, which is if they're going to turn his heart astray, then he may not marry them. But as long as they're righteous, he can have as many wives as he wants. Now the Gemara now says, Lememra, the Rabbi Yehuda darish time in dekra, Rabbi Shimon lo darish time in dekra. The problem that we have with this is that it seems like when Rabbi Yehuda looks at the pasuk, he says, look at the reason behind the mitzvah, and if the reason no longer applies, then the restriction of that mitzvah no longer applies. That's what it's called, darshin and time in the kra. You look at the reason behind the mitzvah, and as long as the reason doesn't apply, the restriction doesn't apply. And Reb Shimon says just the opposite. Even when the logic behind the mitzvah is not extant, the restriction still holds, and there's still an absolute cap. But the problem is that we know that the opposite is to be true, that Reb Shimon and everywhere else where we've seen Reb Shimon, he's the one who's notorious even, for being dorish time dekra. He looks at the reasoning, the logic behind the pasuk, and extrapolates halacha from that. So how can Reb Shimon be so inconsistent with himself? So where do we know this from? The Tanya, Almana ben shehi aniya ben shehi ashira, ein mamashchin in osa, shenamar lo sachbul beged almana divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That Rabbi Yehuda here is the one who says that the Torah deals in absolutes regardless of the logic. He says, the Torah says you may not take as collateral, as security on a loan, the night garment, the nightgown of a widow. Why? Because she's poor, and she doesn't have anything to sleep with if you're going to take that as security. So therefore, even if you're entitled to take security in the loan, but every sundown, you have to return her nightgown to her so that she'll have something to sleep with. So that's the law of the Torah. And Rabbi Yehuda says that therefore the requirement is that to return the security of an almana, regardless of whether she's poor or wealthy, even if she's the Imelda Marcos of nightgowns, and she has a closet full of nightgowns, you still have an obligation based on the absolute law of the Torah. But Rabbi Shimon Omer, Ashira mimashkin in osa, Aniya in mamashkin in osa. And he says just the opposite. Look at the logic behind the pasuk. It's only if she's poor and doesn't have another nightgown that you have to return it daily to her. But if she's wealthy, you can permanently hold on to the security. Because if you're going to be obligated to return it to her, you're going to be making a bad name among her neighbors. I'm reading my comment. So what does Reb Shimon mean in that last statement? Because if you're going to constantly take security and return it to her every night, and she doesn't need it, so you're going to have to return it every night. And she's going to develop a bad reputation. Look, it's bad enough if she's poor and you have no choice to frequent the home of an almana, right? That's enough for people to start rumors, right? So people will have to know the truth that she's a poor widow, and therefore you're frequenting her home in order to return her security. But if she's a wealthy widow, and people know she doesn't need you to return the nightgown to her, and you go ahead and do that, look what you're doing. You're creating unnecessary bad appearances. The optics are terrible. People will start rumors, and that's not what the Torah wants. So therefore, Reb Shimon says, even though the Torah gives an absolute law of don't permanently keep the security of a widow, don't keep her nightgown, but he says, Zil basar taima. He says, go according to the reasoning of the pasuk. The logic is because she needs a nightgown, because she's poor. But in a situation where she doesn't need it, then darshin and taima dekra. Look at the reasoning behind the pasuk. So the problem is, Alma Reb Yehuda lo darsh taima dekra, Reb Shimon darsh taima dekra. So you see that in Kol HaTorah Kula, Reb Yehuda is the one who says we deal in absolutes, regardless of the logic, and Reb Shimon says no, we extrapolate based on logic. So how can it be that here by the king's number of wives, it's just the opposite, where Reb Yehuda says it's based on logic, and therefore as long as they're righteous women, he can have as many as he wants. And Reb Shimon says no, it's capped at an absolute number of 18. So Ba'alma Reb Yehuda lo darish taima dekra, v'shayni hacha de mefarish taima dekra, matam lo yar below nashim mishum de lo yasser levavo. So the Gemara says you're right. Normally, Reb Yehuda is the one who deals in absolutes. When the Torah doesn't tell you the reason for a mitzvah, then it's irrelevant what the logic behind the mitzvah is. You must deal with it on an absolute level. But it's different over here because the Torah tells you the reason. By the Torah revealing to you the reason, why may the king not have too many wives? Because they'll turn his heart astray. So then you have a right, based on the Torah's explanation, to say, well, as long as they don't turn his heart astray because they're righteous, you can take even more than 18. That's Rabbi Yehuda's approach. Reb Shimon Amar Lecha, Mechti, Ba'alma Darshina Taimid Dekra, Im Kain Lichtov Kra Lo Yarba Lo Nashim, Velishtok, Va'anamina Matam Lo Yarba Mishum De Lo Yasir. Lo Yasir Lomali, Afilu Echas Umesiris Liba Rezu Lo Yisa'ena. So Rabbi Yehuda looks at it just the opposite. He says, Reb Shimon says like this. Normally, when the Torah doesn't write the reason, I have a right to infer the reason and extrapolate based on the logic of that reason. So normally, the Torah doesn't have to write a reason. You can infer the reason yourself. Why then did the Torah write a reason over here? The Torah wrote a reason to tell you that it's different over here. That it's different over here in the sense is that even if one wife, there's that here there's an absolute cap, and lo yasser means that even one wife is too many if she's going to turn your heart astray. Elama'ani mekayim lo yarba. So then why does the Torah say he may not have too many? Da'afilu ka'avigail, that even if the wife is as righteous as Avigail, you can't have more than 18. In other words, one wife is too many if she's not righteous. And even if they're all righteous, lo yarba, you cannot have more than 18. So Reb Shimon basically says, look, the reason why the Torah provided a reason specifically over here is to tell you that it's different from all other places. In all other places, you can extrapolate the halacha based on the logic. But here, where the Torah tells you the reason, what it wants to try and communicate to you is that even when the reason of turning your heart astray doesn't apply, you are capped at 18, and the reason is provided to tell you that even one wife is too many if she's going to turn your heart astray. So now the question is, Hani Shmona Esrei Minolim. Where did we get the number 18 from? Where did, the Mishnah take it as a given that Shmona Esrei, that a king cannot have more than 18. Where does that number 18 come from? Because it's Chai? I mean, is that the reason? No, it's actually based on something really substantive. Dichsiv, so there's a pasuk that talks about the early part of David HaMelech's career as a melech. So what does it say in the pasuk? It says, we're going to go through the psukim very carefully. Vayivoladu leDavid banim bechevron. Before David could move the palace to Yerushalayim, he was king in Hebron. And the scripture lists the sons that were born to him when he was living in Hebron. And who were they? Vayhi becharo Amnon la'achinoam ha'Yisraelis. His firstborn son was named Amnon, and it was from his first wife, Achinoam HaYisraelis. The Umishnehu Kilav rather, La Avigail Eshes Naval HaKarmeli. Second son, his name was Kilav, and he was born to his second wife, Avigail, who had been previously married to Naval. V'hashlishi Avshalom ben Macha bas Talmai Melech Yeshur. Third son is named Avshalom, and he was born to his wife, his third wife, whose name was Macha. Haravi Adoniah ben Chagis. Fourth son is named Adoniah, born to his fourth wife Chagit, and V'hachamishi Shefatya ben Avital. Fifth son, his name is Shefatya, born to his fifth wife Avital. V'hashishi Yitraam le'egla Eshes David. The sixth wife, the sixth son rather, was named Yisraam, and he was born to David's sixth wife, whose name was Egla. Now, how many wives did David have in Hebron? Six wives. So therefore, the Gemara now says as follows. Later on, the Navi comes to David in a few chapters afterwards, as the Gemara points out. So Ela Yuldu LeDavid b'Chevron, Ukamer Le Navi, and later the Navi says to him, Im ma'at va'osifa lecha kahena v'chahena, that I can add a little bit more once David is in Yerushalayim, and I can add for you kahena v'chahena, like these and like these. Now, so what does the Gemara say? Kahena shis v'chahena shis dahavaluhu t'man Yisrei. So, if David already has six, and the Navi is saying, I can add for you like these, meaning I can add for you another six like these, and then he says, Chahena, second time, I can add for you another six like these, so that 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18. So, Maskif lo Ravina, Ema Kahena Tartesrei v'Chahena Esrim va'arba. But wait a minute, says Ravina. Maybe that's not the correct way to look at it. Maybe Kahena means, like these, your existing six, and therefore once you have Kahena, you have now 12, 6 of your existing wives and another 6. And then the second time it says v'chahena, it's cumulative. It's to double the 12 that I've already granted you. So maybe the number should be 24 and not 18. And Tanya no mihachi lo yarba lo nashim yoser me esrim va'arba. And we actually have a brisa that argues with our Mishnah, whereas our Mishnah says the max is 18, this brisa says the max is 24, based on that logic that we just presented. And Leman de Dorish Vav Arba Mushmonahav. The Gemara says, I'll even press it further. Rabbi Akiva says that when you have the letter Vav in a pasuk, which is an unnecessary conjunction in many cases, you can use that to double a number. So therefore it says Kahena v'chahena. So therefore you should say that the extra letter Vav is coming to double the number 12 to make it 24. And Tanya no mihachi lo yarba lo nashim yoser me arboim u'shmona. And we have a brisa that supports that. There's another brisa that says that a king's maximum is 48, not 24. So the Tana didun my time. So Taka, why is he a minimalist and says it's only 18? Because Amar Rav Kahana makish kahina basra lo kahina kama. Ma kahina kama shis, af kahina basra shis. So the answer is because he looks at the two words kahena v'chahena, and he says they're exactly the same word, and therefore they must mean the same thing. If the first kahena meant 6, corresponding to your pre-existing 6 wives, then the second v'chahena also must mean 6 as well. And that's where I get the total of 18. Basically, different approaches to the very same pasuk. So the Gemara's question now is v'ha havai Michal. But wait a minute, we counted all of David's 6 wives, and we know that Michal was one of his first wives given to him by King Saul. Where was Michal in this list? So Amarav, Egla zu Michal, V'lamani kroshima Egla, shechaviva alav ke'egla. That really Egla, which is wife number 6 in this list, is none other than Michal. Why is she called the Egla? Because she was as precious to David as a newborn calf to a farmer who's raising cattle. That's okay. It's romantic, isn't it?
My wife adds on my cow.
Honey, you're as dear to me as a newborn calf. Right? Try that one day, and then you can come to my house. Okay, v'cheinu omer, and so too does it say in Sefer Shoftim, lulei charashtem be'eglasi v'goymer, that Shimon castigates the Philistine, Shimshon, castigates the Philistines and said, had you been silent with my eglah, referring to his wife, who revealed to them the riddle that was the key to his strength, right? And he felt betrayed, right? And he called his wife his eglah, his calf. Now, umi havel u'michal bini. Now our next question is, if you're telling me that eglah is Michal, then you're telling me that Michal had a son. But we know, I think, Mr. Shield, you had asked this question. Didn't you say that, don't we know that Michal didn't have any sons? We know that Michal, David also, didn't have children until the day she died. So Amar Rav Chizda, ad yom Mosa lo hayala, biyom Mosa hayala. So the answer is, the first answer the Gemara gives, which is we're going to reject in a second, is that she didn't have children, the pasuk says, until the day she died. But on the day she died in childbirth, she had a child right before she died. But wait a minute, how can you say that? Mechti bonim heicha kachashivlu bechevron, v'ilu ma'isa demichal b'Yerushalayim hava. D'chsiv u'michal ba'ashol nishkava be'arachalon, v'ateres hamelech David mefazez u'mecharker lifnei Hashem v'ativez. So, but wait a minute, the pasuk, the chronology is off. David's wives and their respective sons are listed when David is early in his reign in Hebron. And the story of Michal getting punished by being childless is mentioned afterwards, after David has moved his kingdom to Yerushalayim. And that's when she sees David from the window dancing very vigorously and frivolously, in her opinion, upon the return of the Aron from captivity. And that's why she was punished, because she criticized David for rejoicing excessively by dancing so much. So the timing doesn't work. Why would she have, if you're telling me that she had a child, she died in childbirth, and she died, the day she died, she had her only child, how could that be if she was cursed with childlessness only after they got to Yerushalayim? That doesn't work out. So the Gemara answers, V'amar Rav Yehuda v'tema Rav Yosef shaklasa Michal lemitrafasa. And what happened? What was her curse? That her uterus was dislodged or dislocated in some way. So ela ema ad osumaisa hayala mikan ve'elech lo hayala. So the real answer is, says the Gemara, is that she had a child before the story of Yerushalayim took place, where she was punished, and that was her only child. Because I guess after that, once she moved to Yerushalayim, she was punished by not being able to bear children anymore because she was critical of David. Now, David od pilakshem v'nashim b'Yerushalayim. Now, how can you tell me that David was capped at 18? Doesn't the pasuk say that he took a multitude of other wives and concubines when he came to Yerushalayim, which implies that he had a whole harem of women? So the Gemara answers, L'miluye shmona asar. So the answer is, no, you're right. He did take more wives and concubines, but he capped it at 18. In other words, there's no inconsistency. And it seems from the Gemara that the cap on 18 wives is a total of wives plus concubines. In other words, you can't say, well, I'll take 18 wives plus I'll add a few concubines. No. Only the maximum number of women that a king can consort with is 18, whether they're concubines or whether they're wives. So the Gemara now says, "My nashim u'may pilakshim." What's the difference between a wife and a concubine? So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, nashim b'ksuva v'kiddushin, pilakshim below ksuva below kiddushin. The difference is that a wife, by definition, has received kiddushin, and she receives a ksuva, and a pilagish is a woman who agrees to be the sole consort, meaning that she'll seclude herself exclusively for that man, but she doesn't require kiddushin and doesn't require a ksuva. In other words, she basically says, you know what, I don't want to live alone, but I don't need financial responsibility. I'm an independent woman, and I agree to be your pilegish, which is, there have been movements for centuries to return the pilegish, the institution of pilegish, to the Jewish people. These are fringe elements within society, but they're still going on today. But trust me, you're better off without it, and Klal Yisrael is better off without the pilegish policy. And if you disagree, again, I'll see you at my house.
They don't need a get, right?
What?
Pelagish doesn't need a get.
That's a very good question.
There's no kiddushin.
There's no kiddushin l'cha'ora. She should not require a get. But there should be some. The question is, does a pelagish require some kind of separation? That's not clear from the Gemara here. It's a good question.
How would that fit in with Rabbi Gershon's
That's the point. Rabbeinu Gershom said only wives won, but he didn't say anything about pilagshim. That's why there are people who are arguing today that a pilagish is not a violation of the cherem of Rabbeinu Gershom. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Arba Meos Yeladim Hayu Lo LeDavid V'Kulan B'nei Yifas Toar Hayu, that David had 400 children. All of them were born to him from women who were B'nei Yifas Toar, which means that he had conquered these wives in war. And you know the law of Yifas Toar is that you can even marry her even before she converts to Judaism officially. And these sons that were born to him were very mighty. They were very handsome, muscular, like really, warrior-like men. They had long ponytails, and this was again, like Rashi says in another place, we'll see later on, this whole same idea. They went in the front of the armies in these golden chariots with these ponytails in order to sort of lead the people, show them a sense of confidence. This is what a warrior looks like, right? And these were known as the Balei Agrofen, the men of fists, the strong men of David's army. Va'amar of Yehuda Amarav Tamar Bas Yifas Toar Haisa. And this leads us to a discussion of the story of Amnon and Tamar. So for those who maybe not as, let's review the story because we're going to get into a lot of ins and outs. The scripture in the 13th chapter of Shmuel Bet tells us the story of Amnon and Tamar. Amnon, as you saw, was David's firstborn son. Amnon saw Tamar, who was David's daughter from the Yifas Toar, and he fell in love with her. She was beautiful. Very tsanua, very virtuous girl, but also very beautiful. Amnon was chalashing to be with her. His cousin, Yonadav, as we'll see in a minute, comes to him and says, "Why are you so depressed?" He confides in him and tells him, I'm lovesick with this girl, Tamar. He says, so let me give you some advice. Pretend that you're taka physically ill, get into bed, say that you refuse to eat anything, and that maybe your lovely sister, Tamar, if she's able to keep you company, maybe she'll help to feed you, make you feel better, and you'll recover from your illness. So he does that ruse. It works. He's able to get Tamar to come and make for him some food. He asks everyone to leave the room so he can be alone with Tamar, and he grabs hold of her, and she says, please, what are you doing? This is not right. If you want to marry me, I'm sure we can convince our father David to let us marry, which of course is strange. If they're brother and sister, how can they marry? This is going to prove to us that Tamar was halachically permitted to marry Amnon, and it must be, like Tosfos says, either because she was the daughter of a Yifas Toar, and David had married Tamar's mother, had consorted with Tamar's mother before she officially converted. And the halacha is that a child that is born from a Gentile, even though she has a Jewish father, is a Gentile and is unrelated to the father halachically. And therefore, she was legally allowed to marry her biological half-brother because they're not halachically related. That's what Tamar was saying. Another explanation Tosfos says is that Tamar was actually not even biologically David's daughter at all. But when David captured this Yifas Toar, Tamar's mother, Tamar was already born. And basically David just adopted her. Either way we're going to look at it, the Gemara's point is to point out to us that Amnon was allowed to halachically marry Tamar, but he wouldn't allow himself to do it in a permissible fashion. Mein Genuvin, he just had this lust, and he raped her, tragically raped her. She leaves, tears her clothes, shries, and just demonstrates how distraught she is for having been so horribly violated. This is part of her virtue. She could have covered it up and pretended nothing had happened, but no, she wanted to make sure that this would never happen to anyone else ever again. And that's what the Gemara is going to demonstrate, that Tamar's virtue is what caused the Jewish people to adopt certain halachos to make sure that such a thing could never happen again in Klal Yisrael. So let's take a look at the story now. The story is that Tamar bas Yifas Toar Harasa, she was the daughter of the Yifas Toar. Now how do I know? Shenamar ve'ata dabir no el hamelech ki lo yimna'ani mimcha. Remember, because Tamar said to Amnon, don't do this. Speak to our father, and I'm sure he'll let you marry me. Now, v'isal gadaitach bas nisuan havoi, achte mi havasharyale. And if you're going to tell me that Tamar was a daughter of a regular wife of David, how could Amnon marry his half-sister? So that forces us to conclude that she was a daughter of a Yafas Toar, however we're going to explain it. Ula Amnon Reya Ushmo Yonadav ben Shema Achi David, Ish Chacham V'goymer. That Amnon's best friend was a guy named Yonadav. It was his cousin, his first cousin, David's brother's son, and he was a wise man. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Ish Chacham L'Risha. He was a wise man when it came to giving evil advice. Well, like these mad evil scientists. In other words, they're brilliant, but they know how to use their brilliance for evil plotting. Vayomer Madua ata kacha dal ben Amelech. So one day, Yonadav sees his friend Amnon is very depressed, and he says, "What's the problem?" Vayomer lo Yonadav shechav al mishkavcha v'haschal. And so Yonadav, when he finds out why Amnon is so depressed, he says, "Just pretend that you're sick one day." That Amnon asks everyone to leave the room, and he says, "Let Tamar prepare for me something in her cooking utensils." So she took the misharas, some kind of cooking utensil, and she pours in front of him. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav she'asa salo minei tigun, that she made some kind of fried food for him. Why that's relevant to our story is a bit of a mystery. I don't understand why, unless I'm sure there's deeper metaphor involved in here, but the point is that she was trying to, maybe the aroma of fried food would perhaps arouse him to hunger. She tried everything in order to get him to eat, but nothing worked. But after he raped her, the pasuk says that Amnon hated Tamar with a hatred that was even more intense than the love that he had for her before. Now, the simple explanation of the pasuk is that his hatred arose from this loathing of what he had done both to her and to himself. She represented his own weakness. But the Gemara says that there's a deeper meaning here. My time, why did he hate her so much? So Amar Rav Yitzchak Nima Nikshiralo Va'asa'aso Krushavcha. The answer is that one of Tamar's pubic hairs was so thick and strong that it got tangled in Amnon's organ and severed the organ so that he could no longer use it for sexual purposes. Now, v'chinik shiralo ihi my avda. But why would Amnon hate her? She didn't do anything malicious to him. It just happened. So ela ema kashralo nima va'asa aso kruz shavcha. The answer is that she deliberately made it happen. In other words, she used the power of one of her hairs to get it tangled in his organ as to punish him for what he was doing to her, and that's why he hated her. But Eini v'hadorash rava ma'idchsiv vayetze lach shem bagoyim v'yofyech. Isn't there a pasuk that says that Jewish daughters are famous for their beauty in Sefer Yechezkel? She'ein lahem livnos Yisrael losar beis hashechi v'lo beis ha'erva. And one of the signs of beauty is that Jewish girls do not have any pubic hair, neither in their armpits nor in their genitalia. So how can you tell me that Tamar had pubic hair? The Gemara answers, Shiny Tamar debas yifas toar havai. The answer is because she wasn't born Jewish. She came from a foreign nation. Even though she was beautiful, she had hair. So Vatikach Tamar Efer al Rosha. So what does the pasuk then say? That after she's raped, she's distraught. So she takes ash and puts it on her head. Uchesones hapasim asher aleha, and she tears the beautiful garment that a princess would wear. So Tana Mishmei de Rav Yeshua ben Karcha, Geder Gadol Gadra Tamar Ba'osasha. She did a very valiant thing to create a safeguard for Jewish girls in the future. Amru livnos malachim kach, livnos hedyotos al achas kama v'kama. Im litznuos kach, liprusos al achas kama v'kama. So people said, if this could happen to a princess, that she could get raped, imagine what could happen to a common Israelite girl. And if this could happen to a modest girl like Tamar, imagine what could happen to girls who are more forward than her. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Ba'osa Sha'a Gazru al Hayichud Val Pnuya. That at that moment, because they saw what could potentially happen, they decreed that from then on you could not be secluded with a woman, and they also decreed that you could not consort with a single woman. So the Gemara says, Yichud de Oraisahu, the Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Reb Shimon ben Yehud Tzadak, Remez liyichud min haTorah minayin shenemar ki yasischa achicha ben imecha. So how can you tell me that they decreed at that time that it was prohibited to seclude yourself with a woman? That's already from the times of the Torah. As the Brisa says, how do we know that there is a prohibition of yichud? Where is it alluded to in the Torah? Because the Torah, when it talks about idolatry, it says that when your half-maternal brother tries to seduce you to worship idols, so the Gemara's question is, V'chi ben aim mesis ben ab eno mesis, elalomar lecha ben misyachinim imo ve'ein acher misyachinim kol harayash of the Torah. He says, why does the Torah's example of your brother who is the son of your mother? What do you mean? Your half-brother from your mother will seduce you to idolatry and your paternal half-brother will not seduce you to idolatry? But there's an allusion here that it says, Ben imecha, the son of your mother, to tell you that a son is allowed to have privacy, seclusion with his mother. But any other two, male and female, a male and a female, who are prohibited to each other, may not have yichud with each other unless it's a son and a mother. So what you learn from here is that the prohibition of yichud is alluded to in the Torah. Why then did they need to decree on it? Ela ema gozu al yichud de penuya. So the answer is that they didn't make two separate gezeras, one on yichud and one on consorting with a penuya, a single girl, but they made a decree that a Jewish man may not have yichud with a single girl, even though she's permitted to him sexually, but it'll lead to a consorting out of the context of marriage, and that's not right, and like we see from Amnon and Tamar, and therefore they made a decree that you can't even seclude yourself with a woman who halachically is permitted for you to marry. Va'adoniya ben Chagis misnasei lemor ani emloch. Related to this is another son who rebelled against David, and that was Adoniya ben Chagis. He arrogantly decided towards the end of David's life, I'm going to take over David's kingdom, whether he likes it or not. So Amar Rav Yehuda Marav Malabit Shebikesh Laholmo V'Lohol Masa. This teaches me that Adoniya attempted to place the crown on his head, but the crown did not fit. And like Rashi says, that David's head was shaped in a certain way that there was a slight indentation at the top of his head. And that way the crown had a crossbar on it that fit very perfectly in that indentation. Don't ask me why, right? But it's an indication that that's the person who's rightfully the king. Adoniya did not have that same shape of a head, and therefore was not worthy of the crown. Vayaslo rechev uparashim v'chamishim ish ratzim lefanav. And Adoniya made for him horses and chariots and runners. He had 50 runners run in front of him to show that he's the monarch. So the Gemara says, "My Rabusa." Like, what's the big deal? Anyone can hire 50 guys to run in front of him. That's not a sign that you're the big macher. 500 maybe, 5,000 maybe, but 50, it's garnished. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Kula netule techul v'chakuke kapos raglaim ayu. These were extraordinary 50 people. They all had their spleens removed, and they had the bottom of their feet scraped off. The removal of the spleen, according to ancient medicine, makes you run faster. So they were exceptionally fast, and having the flesh of the bottom of your foot scraped off surgically will kill the nerve endings on the bottom of your foot so that you can run on thorns and thistles and not feel any pain. And this was a way of him demonstrating that he had the most powerful runners that could run faster than anybody in the kingdom. Why are we bringing in Adoniyahu now? Because as we'll see in just a moment, we're going to continue our discussion of David HaMelech's children. We're going to talk about other children of David. So this is all part of the same contextual discussion. Let's go on to the next Mishnah. Lo yarbelo susim el kedei merkavto. A king, also the Torah says, not only may he not have too many wives, but he may not have too many horses, right? He can only have enough for his entourage of chariotsmen. And the kesav is of lo yarbelo ma'od el kedei litain aspanya. He's also not allowed to amass too much silver and gold. He can only amass so much as he needs to pay the militia that's going to protect the kingdom. The kosev lo sefer Torah lishmo, yotze la milchama, motzia imo, nichnasu machnisa imo, yoshev bedin hi imo, mesav hi kenegda. the king has to write a special Sefer Torah specifically for himself, meaning it can't be something that he just gets from somebody else. And when he goes out to war, he takes it with him. When he comes back from war, he keeps it with him. When he sits in judgment, it's with him. And even when he goes to bed, he has to put it on the side so that it's in the same room as him. As it says, it shall be with him, and he shall read from it all the days of his life. The Gemara now says, Tanu Rabbanan, lo yar below susim, yachol afilu kedei merkavtu parashav, tamulomar lo. Lo enomar bevel marbu kedei richbo parashav. The Brisa says he may not have too many horses. So you might have thought that even if he needs it for his entourage, he's not allowed to. So the Torah says, no, it's only for him. But if it's for his entourage, then he's allowed to have as many horses as he needs for his riders and his chariotsmen. Hamani mekayim susim. So what does the pasuk mean when it says too many horses? Susim habatlonim. This refers to idle horses, meaning horses that are not doing anything. He just wants to amass them just to have them in his inventory. That we don't allow them to have. But if they're serving a purpose, then he can have as many as he needs. Now, minayin shafilu sus echad v'hu botel shehu b'lo yarbe. And how do you know that even one horse that is idle is too many? So tamulom or laman harbos sus. Because we have another pasuk that says that we're worried that the king will go back to Egypt in order to amass horse. And their horse is written in the singular, and that tells me that even one horse that's idle is one horse too many. So the Gemara says, if even one horse is too many and he's in violation, then why does the Torah have to write the word susim in the plural? What is that coming to teach? So the Gemara answers, laver below sasa al kol sus vasus. It's to tell me, you see, the words laman harbos sus is written not necessarily in the negative, but lo yar below susim, that he may not have horses, is additionally written to tell me that even though there's a violation when you acquire too many horses, each and every additional horse that you acquire that is idle incurs you an additional violation. That's why you have to write it twice. Laman harbos sus and lo yar below susim teaches you both halachas. There's a violation, and every additional horse incurs an additional violation. Now, time at the kasav rachman lo. So the Gemara is asking a question. You mean that the Torah had to say the word lo for him to tell me that the only prohibition is for him to amass it for himself so that the horses remain idle? Now, if the Torah had not written that, what would I have thought? That a king is not allowed to acquire horses for his entourage? How can you think that? Why does the Torah need to write that? Isn't that obvious? That a king can have horses for his entourage? So the Gemara answers, Lo tzricha la'afushe. The chiddush is like this. You might have thought that if the Torah had not commented on this at all, you might have thought that if the Torah just says that a king should not have too many horses, he should have a minimal amount of horses for a small entourage. Because you might have thought that the principle that the Torah is trying to convey is that a king has to be modest. But that's a mistake. The point is that a king should not have unnecessary wealth. But if he wants to create wealth and show pomp and glory of his monarchy, he can have an entourage as large as he wants. He can have hundreds or thousands of horses riding together with him in his entourage, as long as they're all serving a purpose. And that's why the Torah says, look, the only prohibition is if he amasses the horses not for the public persona of the king, but just for personal use. That's the chiddush. So the Gemara now says, "V'kesav v'zahav lo yar below ela kidei litein aspanya." We also saw in the Mishnah the king may not amass gold and silver unless he needs it to pay the militia. So Tana Rabbanan v'kesav v'zahav lo yar below yachal afilu kidei litein aspanya tamalomar lo eno marba avol marbahu kidei litein aspanya. So again, it's the same derivation. We have the word lo to tell me that it's only amassing a personal fortune that's prohibited, but to amass it, to be able to compensate the militia, is perfectly fine. So time at the cost of Rahman lo, halav hachi havamina filuk de litein aspanya nami lo. The same question that we asked before. What do you mean? You needed to say that explicitly, that it's only a personal fortune that he cannot amass, but he's allowed to amass money for the militia? Why does the Torah need to communicate that? Isn't that obvious? Every king needs a militia. So lo tzricha laharvacha. Same answer. slightly different verbiage? The answer is that I might have thought without that word lo, that a king has to minimalize, he has to diminish as much as possible the size of his militia to be able to economize on the king's treasury. The answer is no. When it comes to amassing a fortune, a war chest, for the sake of the militia, it could be as large as you want. The only restriction is on personal wealth that is not going to be used to serve the public. So hashta de amart lo lidrasha lo yar belo nashim my darasht be. So now that you've told me that the word lo is coming to mean that it's only for him personally, the king, then why does the Torah use the word lo when it says he may not take for himself too many wives? What is that word lo being used? What is it excluding? So the Gemara answers, Limeute hedjotos. It's coming to tell us that there's only a restriction of a cap on wives for a king. But there's no cap on the number of wives that a non-king is allowed to marry. You and I can marry as many wives as we want, even more than 18. Not that I would suggest doing it, but it's halachically permitted before the Chayim of Rabbeinu Gershon. Now Rav Yehuda Rabbi, Ksiv vayi l'shlomo arboim elef aravos susim lemerkavto, uchesiv vayi l'shlomo arba alafim aruyo susim. So there's a contradiction in the psukim. One pasuk says that Shlomo had 40,000. What are the individual slots for horses? Stalls. He had. Thank you for that word. He had 40,000 stalls of horses in his stables. Another pasuk says he only had 4,000. So what is it? 40,000 or 4,000 stalls? So haketzad. Imar boim elef itztablos hayu kol echad ve'echad hayu bo dalet alafim aruvos susim. Im dalet alafim itztablos hayu kol echad ve'echad hayu bo arboim elef aravos susim. The answer is it's 40 times 40,000 times 4,000 is what he really had. Either he had 40,000 stables and each of those 40,000 stables had 4,000 stalls, or he had 4,000 stables and each one of those 4,000 stables had 40,000 stalls. It's a huge amount. It's probably a guzma, but many times the Gemara uses numbers for guzma purposes. Rav Yitzchak Rami, ksiv im ein kesef nechshav b'mei Shlomo lima'uma, u'chesiv ayitein Shlomo es ha'kesef Yerushalayim ka'avanim. Now we have another contradiction. One pasuk says that during the reign of King Solomon, silver was worthless because it was so abundant in his kingdom. But another pasuk says that King Solomon installed silver in his kingdom like stone. Basically, the way you and I would install a stone pavement, he used silver as the pavement. But at least it shows that silver had a value at least equivalent to stone. So one pasuk said that silver was worth less, and another pasuk says that silver had a minimal value. So how do you reconcile the two psukim? So lo kasher kan kodem shenasa Shlomo es bas paro, kan la'achar shenasa Shlomo es bas paro. The answer is that before he married the daughter of Paro, which is considered to be sinful in the eyes of the Gemara, because basically why did Shlomo marry the daughter of Paro? Because he wanted to show that he was cosmopolitan and that he was willing to make treaties with all the other nations. He wanted to be an international kind of leader to mix with all of the other nations. That's considered to be a sign of weakness and a lack of bitachon in Hashem. And therefore, before he married Bas Paro, silver was worthless. Once he married Bas Paro, the kingdom began to diminish, and silver now became of value. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak b'shashen asa Shlomo Bas Paro Yorad Gavriel v'noatz kana bayam v'hela shirton ve'olav nivna krach gadol shebaromin. That the day that Shlomo married the daughter of Paro, showing that he felt that he needed to be conciliatory with the other nations, showing his lack of bitachon, Hashem said, you want to consort with other nations? I'll show you what the other nations can do. And this was the start of the major anti-Semitism of Rome. And the way that the Gemara describes it is Gavriel took a stick, stuck it in the middle of the Mediterranean, and the swirling waters created an accumulation of earth around that stick, which eventually became the island of Rome. We know Rome is not an island, but it's the peninsula of Italy. That's how Italy started, was when Shlomo married the daughter of Paro, according to the Gemara. V'amar Reb Yitzchak mipnei malo niskalu taimei Torah, shaharei shtei mikros niskalu taiman, and nichshel behen gadol ha'olam. So why is it, asks Reb Yitzchak, that the Torah does not normally provide reasons for the mitzvahs? It just basically says do this or don't do this without giving a reason. The answer is that the two times where the Torah does provide a reason was the cause of a fall from grace of one of the greatest people who ever lived, referring to King Shlomo. Ksiv lo yarba lo nashim, amar Shlomo ani arba velo asur. Uchasiv ayi le'ezikna Shlomo nashav, le'ezikna Shlomo nashav hitu es levavo. So, because why? Because it says that a king may not have too many wives so that they don't turn his heart astray. Shlomo said, the reason is not to turn my heart astray. I'll marry many wives and they won't turn my heart astray. And yet we see he fell. Because by the end of his life, Scripture records they turned his heart astray. Uchasiv lo yarba lo susim, v'amar Shlomo ani arba v'lo ashiv, uchasiv v'ateitze merkava mimitzrayim b'sheish v'goyim er. And we also, the second michshol was that Shlomo said, the Torah says don't amass too many horses so that you don't have to go back to Egypt, where I took you out from to acquire Egyptian horses. Shlomo said, I'll get horses, I won't have to go back to Egypt. But we see the end result was that he went back to Egypt to acquire more horses. So you see that knowing the reasons for the mitzvahs can be very destructive. The Kosef Sefer Torah Lishmo, he writes his own Sefer Torah, Tana uvulvat shelo yisno'eh b'shel avosav. So the Bryce explains the reason for this. He's not allowed to glorify himself with other people's things. A king is supposed to be self-made, including the Torah that he writes. Amar Rabba, afal pi sheinichalo avosav la'adam Sefer Torah, mitzvah lichtov mishalo. So Rabba extrapolates that and applies it to every person. You may have inherited a Sefer Torah from your mishpacha, but you still have a mitzvah to write your own. Shenamar ve'ata kisvilchem es ashira, as it says, write for yourselves this Torah song, which means you can't just inherit a Sefer Torah, you got to write your own. So Eisvei Abaye, Abaye challenges this. The Kosev lo Sefer Torah lishmo shelo yisno'eh b'shel acherim. But the Torah says that only a melech has to write his own Sefer Torah, so as not to feel that he can glorify himself with past people's glory. Melech in hedjot lo, so it seems it only applies to a king. But a regular person can take a Sefer Torah, inherit a Sefer Torah from others, and use that as the mitzvah. So the Gemara says, Lo tzricha lishtei Torahs. No, so the answer is, every person has a mitzvah of writing his own Sefer Torah. What's unique about a king? Not that he has to write it himself, but rather he's got to write two Torahs, whereas everybody else only has to write one Torah. Uchidatanya, the Brisa says, V'chosav lo es mishnei v'gomer. As the Torah says, he shall write the Mishneh Torah. What is the word Mishneh? It comes from the word shnayim, which means he's got to write two Torahs. Kosev lishmo shtei Torahs, echas shehi yotza v'nechneses imo, ve'echas shemunachas lo beveis kenazov. So he's got to write two Torahs, one that goes out with him wherever he goes, and the other one that stays at home. And it's to remind the king that you're the same guy on the outside as the same guy who takes off his gatkas one leg at a time when he goes to bed at night. That's the reminder. It's the same Torah. Now, osa shiyotzes v'nichneses imo, eno nichnas balola beis hamerchatz balola beis hakisei, shenemar b'ha'isa imo b'karabo, makam haroi likros. And another thing we learn from that is that the Sefer Torah that he carries all around with him, he must leave it outside when he goes to the bathhouse or to the washroom, because the Torah says he has to be able to read from it wherever he goes. And since you can't read Torah in a bathroom, so therefore he's got to remove it from himself, from his person. Let's say he's carrying around as an amulet around his neck, he's got to take it off before he goes into the washroom. Amar Mar Zutra v'tema Mar Ukva b'tchila nitna Torah liyisrael b'ksav Ivrit v'lashon hakodesh chazar v'nitlam b'mei Ezra b'ksav Ashur v'lashon arami. So this Gemara really requires a tremendous amount of unpacking that unfortunately we don't have time for today. But originally, says the Gemara, the Torah was written in Hebrew script, which is not what we have today, and it was given in the Hebrew language, which is what we do use today. But it was eventually changed in Ezra's time when he retaught the Torah to the people who came from the exiles. He gave them the Torah in Ashurite script, which is what we have today as Hebrew letters, and he translated the entire Torah into Aramaic so that they would understand it. But Biru Lahem Yisrael Ksav Arshurus V'lashon HaKodesh V'hinichu Lahedjotas Ksav Ivris V'lashon Arami. But the Jewish people on their own decided, Shkoyach Ezra, for giving us Ksav Ashurus, we love it, it's beautiful, but we prefer Lashon HaKodesh, the original language of the Hebrew that was given to us by the Ribono Shel Olam, and we will leave Ksav Ivris and Ashuris and Aramaic language, we'll leave that for the commoners, but not for the Jewish people. Man hedjotos, Amar Reb Chizda Kutoi. Who are these commoners? Give it to the Kutites, who reject Torah Sheba'al Peh, but we'll keep the original Hebrew language Torah. My Ksav Ivris. So what is this Ksav Ivris? This Hebrew script that we no longer have. Amar Reb Chisda Ksav Libona'ah. Now you could translate that in many different ways. Libonah could be Lebanese, I don't know. But it could also mean, as Rashi says, Osios Gedolos, large letters like the ones that are found in amulets, meaning that they look very different. They look like incantational text, magical text, but it's not the original Hebrew that we have today. By the way, there are many archaeological finds that have this Hebrew script on it that shows that there was a more ancient script before Ksav Ashuris. There's a whole issue in Machlokus in the Rishonim whether Ksav Ashuris was the original text. We'll get to that in Mirz Hashem tomorrow. Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer Roy Haya Ezra Shetinasei Torah Yadu LiYisrael Ilmole Kadmo Moshe, that Ezra was so great that he was worthy that had there never been a Moshe that came before him, he would have been chosen by God to be the giver of the Torah. So b'Moshe hu Omer u'Moshe Allah El HaElokim, be'Ezra hu Omer hu Ezra Allah miBavel. Ma Aliyah ha'Omer kan Torah, af Aliyah Omer lahalan Torah. And where do you see this? Because of a similarity of language, because both by Moshe and by Ezra it says that they ascended. Moshe ascends to heaven to receive the Torah. Ezra ascends to Yerushalayim from Bavel, and so you see that he was as worthy as Moshe to give the Torah. B'Moshe hu Omer va'osit tziva Hashem ba'esah lelamed eschem chukim u'mishpatim. Be'Ezra hu Omer ki Ezra hechin levav lidrosh historis Hashem v'lasos v'lamed b'Yisrael chok u'mishpat. Very similar language of being the teacher of the laws and the statutes are written both by Moshe and by Ezra. The Afal Pishalo Nitna Torah al Yado Nishtana al Yado Haksav. And even though the Torah was not given via Ezra, because it was already given via Moshe, Ezra was the master of a monumental shift in the giving of the Torah, in that the script that was used from then on was in Ksav Ashuris and not in the original Ksav Ivris. Shenamar, the Chasav Hanashtavan, Kasov Aramis, Umeturgam Aramis. That the pasuk in, I believe this is a pasuk in Ezra, and it says that there was a Nishtavan script. Nishtavan comes the word lihishtanot, which means to change, and this indicates that there was a paradigm shift in the writing that was given to give over the Torah, and that it was written in Aramaic, and it was translated into Aramaic. Remember that story about the writing on the wall in the book of Daniel that no one knew how to read it? It was because it was written in the original Hebrew script, or it was written in a script that was not known to anyone, and that indicates that there was a paradigm shift at that time to change the script from the original Hebrew to the more modern Ksav Ashuris. Okay, Uchasiv, the cost of es Mishnei HaTorah Hazos, Ksav Haroi Lihishtanos. So, and finally, we'll stop with this today, that it also says that the king shall write for himself a Mishneh Torah. The word Mishneh, as we said before, means two. But here the word Mishneh means change, Lihishtanot. And therefore, this, what Moshe Rabbeinu was alluding to, is that the Torah would eventually change in the way that it would be written from then on. That there would come a time in history where we would change the Torah from being written from Ksav Ivris into Ksav Ashuris. This is astounding, this Gemara. That the Torah was originally pre-programmed to have its script change in its appearance. Astounding concepts, which we have to delve into a little bit more later.
What is